This is Tom Gimbel, founder and CEO of LaSalle Network. LaSalle Network is one of the largest recruiting firms in the country. Tom, pretty good number here. Give us your thoughts. Yeah.
Start off like this every month. What do you mean pretty good? Pretty good. 250,000 jobs added. They were expecting 180. This is a great number.
Yeah, I mean, I think Paul and I were talking about earlier, Tom. The Fed has forecast unemployment to go to 4.5% by year end. We're at 3.4% now. That means we would have to lose about 100,000 jobs a month through the end of the year. You don't see that happening, do you?
No, I'm more bullish on that. I think the challenge that we see, I've been doing a lot of research and thinking about this, guys, which is always a scary topic if I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But I believe that the biggest difference now between 2009 recession, between '01, things in recent time, is that now we have a very stable new economy. And what I mean by that is e-commerce has been around for a generation now, right? Now the newest thing is AI, but we've had this full technology surge for a full generation. There are more companies, more entrepreneurs, more ideas being launched. The world is truly flat. That we're never going to have the same levels of unemployment that we had before because we're too diverse of an economy than we ever have been before, sans a pandemic, right? So big tech hired way too many and laid off. So now there's small companies that are hiring these people. There's brick and mortar companies that are hiring these people. There's always going to be another area that's growing. And I think that's a real difference than anything we've ever had.
So, Tom, when you talk to companies, what are they really looking for here? We had a gentleman on before who kind of works with high school graduates, and we were talking about vocational training and things like that. Getting these people, Ken Smith, folks that don't necessarily go to college. So, how do you view that part of the employment market?
Well, I think that's the blue collar side and vocational and trades, and I think it's really important. And you're always going to need people to throw a hammer, turn a wrench, and do those things. But at the same time, the vocational trades are going to go upskilled too, whether it's working in computers, whether it's doing maintenance on more aircraft and different kinds of cars. And if cars go driverless, we need more mechanics and more technicians and more engineers to repair those. And so I think that those are really crucial to the economy. The problem is we've got to have bridges for these people to get across. They don't know that there's exposure. I was talking to some people. I'm headquartered in Chicago. I said, we don't need more $150,000 white-collar jobs in Chicago. We need more $50,000 to $80,000 blue-collar jobs in Chicago for people on the south and west sides that aren't having the education levels as the north side and be doing more things like that. So the question to me is, when is our cities and countries or cities and states that have bigger areas where factories and things like that can be built, when are we going to take that from the South, where these car companies have been doing it forever, and do those in distressed areas outside of major metropolitan northern cities?
By the way, talk to us for a second about your decision to stay in Chicago, Tom. We've seen big companies, Boeing, Citadel, et cetera, moving out. I have friends who are, liberal, lefty Democrats, and even for them, they say the crime is getting a little bit too much.
Yeah, the crime is definitely a problem. The candidate I wanted to win for mayor didn't win, and that progressive left, not the traditional Democrat, but the progressive left really took charge. And now we've got to see what happens. The state's attorney for Chicago, Cook County, decided not to run, and that's a positive when it comes to law enforcement, at least viewed by most citizens. I think Chicago is still Chicago, the same way that New York's had problems and L.A. and San Francisco have had problems. It's the biggest city in the Midwest. It's a great American city with great colleges and tons of affluence and history here, but this is not the best of times.
So, do you see that in the data out there, Tom? I mean, it just seems like everything we hear or read, it's people, picking up roots and flocking to Florida and Texas. I don't know where they're going to put them all. But, I mean, do you see that regionality in the jobs data?
Yeah, you see that there's more in Florida, but I think we're going to hit a crossroads there, too. And I was just giving a presentation on this to a group of CEOs. The problem with Florida is, and people know this, and I'm not knocking, the state's great, my parents live there, yada, 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 but the public school system isn't great. Why is that? There's no state income tax. And so when you have not a great public school system, it's always been controlled by elderly people in retirements. If you're going to have more young people going there with kids, you're going to end up having the haves and the have-nots, which is going to create problems in 5, 10, 15 years that you've got the rich people going to private schools, making a ton of money. You're going to have poor people going to lesser schools, and the state's going to get saturated, and you're going to have problems there. And I think that those are real challenges that people don't want to talk about, the same way you have it in New York and Chicago, where the elites go to these private schools and the public schools are waning, and that's why we have such wealth discrepancy. Isn't because of anything other than education discrepancy in the public school systems.
Do you see, speaking of wealth discrepancy, and just to get back to the jobs number, I mean, this labor market is pretty amazing. Do you see it as tight nationally? Do you see, regional issues that you want to highlight? Yesterday we talked to a left-leaning economist, Claudia Sahm. She said that, 40% of the states in the U.S. still have employment levels below 2019.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing. One day you'll have to explain to me how you can have an economist who leans liberal or conservative when they should just be studying the data. But to your question, my thought is that with the jobs data, it's nowhere near as tight, and that's real from Main Street information. It is nowhere near as tight as it was a year ago to find people. We do temporary white-collar staffing and search work, and I'm not seeing huge counteroffers like we were to get people to stay. We're not seeing people offering huge increases on salaries for people to go. We're seeing really constant people leaving for good opportunities. The biggest change is companies are still hiring, but we're not seeing big companies hiring in volume, which means what we've always seen, job creation comes from small to medium-sized companies in this country.
All right, so any cracks in your armor out there?
Are you worried? I mean, especially if it's small to medium-sized companies, and we hear this from every economist on both sides of the aisle, that they're so key to this economy. Are you worried about the bank situation? Because if there's a credit crunch, those small to medium-sized companies are going to have more difficulty doing refinancing.
So the biggest area I see in the people that I talk to isn't on the regional banking side. It's on the commercial real estate side. So what we're going to have, from what it sounds like, is, and we've already had a couple of buildings in Chicago that this has been acknowledged on, is that the buildings are going to be sold for the cost of the mortgage, if not less.
Right.
And I think the rich are going to get richer with the equity residentials, and the Blackstones are going to come in and get buildings on the cheap. But I think that's a good thing because it'll reset the rent.
Reset the market. Yep.
We're seeing companies go back to the office, guys. So I think it's all going to work out.
All right, Tom. Thank you very much. Tom Gimbel, founder and CEO of LaSalle Network.